This entitled mother wants to completely control her children, even forcing them to quit their jobs. When they call her out on it, she refuses to take any responsibility. Happy birthday, today's your birthday, and on with the revamped show. This story happened like 9 or 10 years ago, like 2010, and around Christmas time, and it's about my brother, around 6 at the time, my dad and me at 9. So on to the story. Me and my brother were packing our stuff to go to Houston to visit some of my dad's relatives for Christmas. We were going to spend Christmas at our uncle's house, so we brought all the Christmas presents and so forth. Going from Dallas to Houston was at least 4 hours on car, so my parents were worried that my brother was going to be throwing a fit throughout the car ride. My brother is autistic. At the time it was pretty severe that he couldn't speak, so we spoke sign language to him and I knew the basics like if he needed to poo or was hungry, etc. When we went on long car rides, he easily gets tired for sitting for so long, and he tends to kick the front seats of the car or harm himself like scratching his face. Fast forward to the trip. Mum and Dad were looking at each other like they were sharing a secret, and they let my brother open one of his presents early. I was shocked. My parents had bought my brother a Nintendo DSi XL with the Super Mario Bros. Game. These were the hottest toys on Christmas, and me and my brother wanted one so badly, and now he finally had one. The rest of the car ride was me and my brother fighting over the DS in who got to play, until I was forced to give him the DS for the rest of the trip. Mum gave me a nasty glare and I shut up. Before we went to Houston, we stopped at Wharton to pick up some relatives and give some gifts. We stopped at a Buc-ee's nearby and went inside to get a bite. My mum was fueling up the car and my dad went inside to take a pee and told me to watch my brother until he was gone. We were browsing the Buc-ee's plushies aisle and noticed EP staring at us. I felt weirded out, but I continued to look at the Buc-ee's keychains when I heard a sickening shriek right next to me. I stood in horror when I saw EP prying my brother's DS away from him. To my brother's credit, for a 6-year-old, he put up a fight. He was screaming his lungs out and relentlessly kicking EP to let go of his DS. I didn't know what to do, but then I yanked my brother and the DS out of EP's grip and stared her down. EP looked to be in her 40s with a badass Texas mum shirt and the ugliest short Karen hairstyle that screamed, "Let me speak to your manager." EP looked like someone spat at her and said,
"Little girl, give that back to me. It's mine. And if you don't give that back, I'm going to talk to your parents for stealing."
I was like, what the heck, is this lady insane? So I said back, "No, that's my brother's. I saw you trying to take it from him." I was beyond scared of this lady and was stepping away when she lunged at me to try and take the DS back again. Thankfully my dad came back and stepped in between us and EP, and scooped my brother up to calm him down. EP is probably re-strategizing or something because she immediately plastered the fakest grin I've ever seen and says,
"Your son just stole my son's game, and I want you to hand it back."
I noticed behind her was a small timid kid hiding behind EP's legs. My dad stays deadpan and says, "This game belongs to my boy. I don't want to see you bothering my kids again." My dad is a big burly guy and is coming off really intimidating. EP sees that she isn't going to get the DS, so she throws one last punch.
"My son needs that game, and I can't give it to him. He deserves it. Besides, your retard son doesn't need it. He's probably too stupid to remember he was using. My son deserves it more."
She was still ranting on, but I was so furious at EP. How dare she talk to my brother like that? But before I could say anything, my dad got real serious and sternly told her, "Get the heck out of here. I better not catch you again because I will call the cops on you for harassing my kids." That got EP to shut up. She huffs and takes her leave, not before cursing us out as she left. When everything died down, the few people who were watching the whole drama asked if we were alright and stuff like that. We bought some snacks and my dad got us some plushies before we left. The rest of our holidays were great, and thankfully the incident didn't dampen our Christmas too much. Now every year that we go to Houston, my dad retells the story of the crazy Buc-ee's lady and seems to add more details every year, like EP was a terrifying troll that stole the gifts of children on Christmas Eve. And if you find her in the Buc-ee's deli aisle, she'll haunt your dreams forever. This was my first encounter of an entitled parent. My brother still finds it hilarious every year that Dad tells the story. Thankfully, he has improved his speech so much thanks to all the speech therapies, and he can now somewhat properly speak. I love him to death, even though he's such a brat sometimes. I hope today EP isn't out there stealing other kids' toys, and hope karma comes around and gives her payback. You know the saying, go pick on someone your own size. Well, I wonder if for an EP, that's why they always choose to pick on kids. Anytime they actually have to deal with a parent, there's no sense of rationality or logic that enables them to justify any action that they're taking. My childhood was meant for this sub. It shall be my home away from petty revenge. To start with, some backstory. My mum was an Air Force brat, and her dad wiggled away from being arrested for something terrible that affects her to this day. Not an excuse for what she did to us. She married a guy in the Navy and had my brother, Donald, not real name, he's just a lot like the character, over a year after I was born. Childhood was a picture-perfect example of being raised by a narcissist, and that's a whole other load of baggage I have to deal with. But not here. You'll want to hear how she made us quit 2 separate jobs in the span of a month. You see, I was in community college and had no car, so I took the bus everywhere. Not the best public transit system ever, but for $30 you could get a monthly pass that allowed you unlimited rides for the month. And after 4 days to and from school, it paid for itself in savings. Donald worked for a very popular grocery store, and he got his preferred task of retrieving carts from the parking lot. He loved it since he didn't really have to deal with customers, and the store was fine with having a guy who didn't mind harassing the bums who tried to take the carts off the property, since retrieving each cart actually costs a fair bit. The trip to work from home took 45 minutes, same for the return trip, and he worked part-time at minimum wage. I worked for the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association at their Southwest Fisheries branch, and due to its location, it usually brought on student hires from UC. I worked for the ectoplankton department, which includes larval fish, and it was my job to curate their historical fish collection, label, relabel, organize, and catalog their database, so the samples could be studied at length, since the data was used to track health of the fish offshore, and the data was useful to the fish and game department for what they could and couldn't do for the year to keep the fishing trade strong. I loved it, loved my boss, and ignored the UC hires who looked down on the community college girl. I took 45 minutes to get from school to work, worked 5 to 5.5 hours a day, and was paid $11 an hour, which was a bit above minimum wage. Trip home after was another 45 minutes. Somehow this reliable and paid work offended Mum, and she spent 3 months moaning and whining about it taking so long for us to get home and get to work. Wouldn't it be better to work closer to home? Blah blah blah. While that may be true for Donald, the location he was at was who was hiring, and NOAA only had the one location in town. Anyone familiar with any bus system knows there's also delays. Buses arriving late due to traffic, relief drivers being delayed due to traffic, and the like. So it sometimes took an hour to an hour and 12 minutes to get home. An oddly specific amount. Donald and I planned accordingly for arriving to work on time, and we both always got to our shifts early and clocked in promptly. Every delay on the way home was met with accusations of listening to music too loud or playing our portable games and not paying attention, to the point that every time she asked why we were home late, one day we both answered, "The bus didn't show up on time, and no, not because of the Game Boy." This answer was met with a hurt expression and a rebuke for not being about to ask that. Finally, I'd had enough, and I recorded her whine one day about the bus's long trips and played it for my boss, who knew about my mum from time in Girl Scouts, as both served in a local service unit organizing programs for younger girls. She believed me, and despite it not being normal for the department, they arranged for a party, usually reserved when UC hires were done for their semester, to see me off properly. It was lovely, and I missed them all very much. I loafed miserably in my room until my final paycheck was mailed. I had only worked there for 7 months. She asked me what made me decide to quit, as if she weren't solely responsible for it. Because I was tired of you whining about how long it took to get to work. Donald loved his job, but spending 6 hours on pavement took its toll, and he often bought insoles to minimize impact and strain caused by it, and was in fairly consistent, low-grade pain. A mere 2 weeks after I quit, he quit, and Mum couldn't be happier, preening about how good it would be, not having him angry at home because of the strain of the work, but wondering why he didn't request a transfer to the branch that was a 7-minute walk away from home instead. Because I was tired of you complaining about how long it took to get to and from work. Dad believed the both of us and said he understood as Mum was being unreasonable. Edit, Mum hasn't worked a paid job since 1997 and routinely tried to sabotage my brother and I when we got work so we'd stay home. Then she'd whine we didn't have jobs. She recited the importance of showing up to work on time, but when we took her up on the offers to drive us to work, she always left late, forcing us to be late. Yeah, that sounds like a mother who wants to stay in power no matter what. And unfortunately, the workforce is competition to her power, as it means someone else requires the attention of her children, and her children become that much more independent. It's perfect for her because she can make them feel bad about being late for work, meanwhile lecturing them about how it's wrong to be late for work. Like, you just can't win with a parent like that. The bride's mother died when she was 12, so the bride's sister stepped in as the mother of bride and helped pay for the wedding. First, the dress shopping. The bride decided to invite entitled mother of the groom along because she was trying to build a better relationship with her. All the bridesmaids and a few more family members came. We were a loud bunch, and Emog, entitled mother of groom, sat in the corner angrily. We kept trying to include her by saying, "Hey Emog, do you like this one? What do you think?" But she still sat there sulking. Later we found out that she'd been snapping pictures of the bride's dress and sending them to the groom's whole family. Well, this was just the start. Throughout the wedding planning, Emog would send the bride ideas and get significant other upset when the bride didn't use her ideas. The wedding was pale pink, pale glittery gold and white. The mother-in-law would send things like Batman-themed wedding cakes. She even bought invitations for the wedding without asking. At some point, Emog had had enough. She confronted the bride and it went like this.
"It's like you don't want me to help in the wedding. It's my son's wedding too."
Not trying to make you feel that way at all. I just have a specific vision.
"Well, we should be the ones paying for it. I'm pretty much going to have to be the mother of the groom and the mother of the bride since you don't have a mom."
Well, actually, I've asked my sister to stand in as mother of the bride, since she's taken care of me since my mum died, and she put me through school.
"This is insane. She's not your mother. She's not even your actual sister."
The bride was adopted when she was 3 days old.
"I'm actually the mother of the groom, so it makes sense that I stand in. Let us plan the wedding or we aren't coming."
Surprise, surprise, she said no. They still came. Later there was another incident. The groom is a fireman, so all of his groomsmen were firefighters. He spends 24-hour shifts with these guys. They're like brothers. However, the groom also had 2 brothers, plus 2 very young siblings, but this wasn't about them. He's not close with either of them. One was off at school and the other was just like Emog, so the groom was hesitant to have them in the wedding. He asked though, and both said they didn't want to participate. Well, that didn't sit well with Emog. She called the groom.
"Include your brothers in your wedding. This is ridiculous. You're being very rude."
"Mum, they don't even want to be in the wedding, and we already have a whole party picked out."
"Well, tell someone that you changed your mind."
"I can't do that, but my brothers can be ushers if they want."
"This is ridiculous. One of the brothers is your twin. How do you think he'll feel when you're standing up there, getting all of the attention, and he's sitting in the crowd? That's not fair to him."
"It's my wedding. When he gets married, I don't care if I'm in the party or not. It'll be his day, and this one is mine."
"If they're not in the wedding, we aren't coming."
And they still freaking came. Later, the Emog found out that they'd requested no kids at the wedding. I know people have mixed feelings about this, but the bride and groom have no kids, and they just wanted everyone to have a night of fun and drinking without worry. However, the groom has a 5-year-old brother and 3-year-old sister. Emog called the bride.
"Why aren't you having kids at the wedding?"
"We just want people to have a good time."
"Well, this is appalling. This is his brother and sister. Now they won't be in any of the wedding pictures. How do you think you'll make them feel?
Well, I'm sorry, but if I make an exception for you, I have to do it for others too.
You're just not inviting them because they're adopted.
Yes, the bride herself is also adopted, so that logic is severely flawed. I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings.
Well, if they can't come, then we aren't coming.
The bride agreed to let the kids come to the ceremony, but they'd have to go home before the reception. And the Emog still came to the reception, sans kids, despite threats not to. Come time to the wedding reception, they had it in a big grand ballroom. There were around 15 tables and no assigned seating. Everyone could sit where they wanted. Well, we realized that Emog and her immediate family all sat in a poorly lit corner away from everyone. Oh well, guess they're keeping to themselves. We were wrong. Later, Emog's brother approaches the father of the bride. Mind you, the bride's dad is a 75-year-old kind-hearted preacher that would never so much as think a cuss word. The exchange went like this. "How are you, sir?" Emog's bro.
"Not good. Bride's a real bee. You know, I'm sitting here with the parents of the groom, and they've seated us in the corner. If that bee of a bride doesn't want us here, she shouldn't have said so. Not exiled us to the freaking corner of the room where we can't enjoy ourselves. The bride is terrible for the groom. I hope he comes to his senses instead of continuing a marriage with a woman who would be so blatantly disrespectful of his mother."
The brother storms off and father of bride was speechless. Later, the bride's brother-in-law approached the father of the groom to see what was going on and try to sort things out. The father of the groom, more level-headed, said he thinks Emog was just upset that we had been so mean to her at dress shopping, that we'd really pushed her out of the group and ignored her, after all of us tried to include her. We all tried to figure out why she was so crazy ever since the engagement. Turns out, she has some weird complex where she wants to be in control of her son. She doesn't want him moving on. He has a twin brother who she's managed to keep under her wing, telling him he's mentally challenged, keeping him in special classes through school, even though the school kept advising her that he was too advanced for them. They spent the groom's whole life telling him how ugly he is, and how his twin is the good-looking twin, and basically told him he shouldn't even try to date because no one would want him. Luckily, the groom made it out of their house, and now lives an extremely successful life with his wife. Hopefully the Emog doesn't cause more strife. A wedding is stressful enough trying to plan it, even when you've got support and help of all those family and friends around you. Can you imagine having this crazy mother that their whole life has tried to manipulate them, like tells them they're ugly and stuff like that so that they don't move on and find a partner? Like, that's so messed up. And keeping the twin brother in special classes just so that he thinks he's dumb? That's psychopathic horror level stuff that you just want to stay as far away from that as possible. Submit your story to be read on the channel at VoiceyHereStories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright, Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.